Food is sustenance, food is health, and food is so much more. We're taking a trek across our Commonwealth, noting how food connects our immigrant population to their original homes. We learn about Indigenous neighbors protecting the legacy of the foods grown by ancestors. And we see how long-standing traditions of our watermen and women deliver delicacies from the tides to our tables. You're watching VPM News Focal Point.
Production funding for VPM News Focal Point is provided by the estate of Mrs. Ann Lee Saunders Brown and by
Welcome to VPM News Focal Points. I'm Angie Miles. One of the most basic elements of being human is eating. Food helps to form us from our earliest moments, and it continues throughout our lives to define who we are, where we belong, and how we experience the world. We intend to pause to consider the cultural connections between identity and food. For centuries, there have been cultures where food is considered medicine. That philosophy has gained an increasing amount of ground among medical professionals in America today. Our Virginia Lens looks in on a pediatric practice where food is a significant part of the treatment plan. The Biden administration has called for Medicaid health benefits to be used for the purchase of groceries, a creative solution addressing food scarcity and poor nutrition and acknowledging the medicinal power of food. In Fredericksburg, Dr. Namali Fernando has been working on the same issue with children, promoting food as medicine in her pediatric practice.
A lot of the kids I was seeing were either overweight or obese, and I wanted to really sort of study what are kids eating, how can I help, how can we prevent this? So that's what I set out to do, starting the Dr. Yum project, and then also shifting my practice to a private practice where I could share a kitchen, share a garden, and really focus on nutrition as sort of the cornerstone of the practice.
By teaching children and their families how food can alleviate many ailments like attention issues and weight challenges and improve overall wellness, her practice and the connected nonprofit known as the Dr. Yum Project are working to change outcomes for whole communities.
The Meal-O-Matic is a really cool tool that you can use. You can look in your refrigerator, your pantry, and see what's available, and then create a customized recipe out of all those things in your kitchen. It's a really great way to be able to get kids that don't think they like a lot of foods to be able to control what the meal is with foods that they do like.
According to the founders, data demonstrates already that the effort to promote the curative power of food is paying dividends in healthier communities and improved diets. The Dr. Yum Project has developed a preschool curriculum that's being used with more than 15,000 children in 29 states. Dr. Fernando and her team want to make a healthier relationship with food part of a cultural shift for the entire country. More information on food as medicine is available on the Dr. Yum website. As we talked with people of Virginia about their relationships with food, we found most have an immediate emotional response. They shared with us how food connects them with loved ones, with traditions, with community.
My husband's Puerto Rican, and when we had our kids, I made a special effort to make the foods that he's used to and to pass on his culture to our children.
Certain areas of the world, they eat certain things, and then if you say you want Indian, you'll have a bit of the history when you go to a restaurant. Like, you'll see what they have around the restaurant, what's normal to them.
Growing up as a kid, you lived in the kitchen. You know, when family and friends came over, you know, there was always a meal, or mother or grandmother was in the kitchen preparing a meal. So yes, bringing folks together, family, church members coming over for, you know, Sunday afternoon meal. Yeah, it is quite important. It brings people together because you get to share in the joy of conversation while you're eating and fellowshipping together.
A number of Virginians talked about being culturally adventurous with food and how learning about other people's traditions often begins with sampling those cultural recipes. Virginia's immigrant population has more than tripled over the past 30 years, topping 1 million people in 2022. Immigrants represent nearly 13% of the Commonwealth's population, bringing their culture and cuisine to our communities. VPM News special correspondent Dennis Ting shows us how sometimes they can also help transform a city.
We have a grilled fish in the tandoor. It took an hour about it to cook on there, on charcoal. And you just smell and taste like you're back home.
It's the lunch hour rush at Pasha Rest and Cafe, and the heat is on in the kitchen to live up to its reputation.
You want authentic Middle Eastern food? You want authentic Kurdish food? The best cuisine in Virginia? And that's guaranteed.
Parwar Sofi, the co-owner of Pasha, opened his restaurant in 2020, bringing his family recipes from Kurdistan to what has now become his new home.
Man, that kebab is still here to this day, just like back home. You grab that meat, it just falls off just like back home.
Parwar isn't alone. Within a few miles, you can find other restaurant owners and chefs also offering a wide range of cuisine from their homelands. But this isn't New York City or the D.C. area.
Harrisonburg isn't a big city. In fact, there are only about 54,000 people who live here. But it is one of the most diverse cities in the state of Virginia, and that diversity is reflected in its food.
Harrisonburg has one public high school, and there are over 60 languages that are spoken in that high school.
Emily Bender is the Associate Director of Development with Church World Service in Harrisonburg, which helps refugees and asylum seekers settle into their new life in the Shenandoah Valley.
Syrians, Afghans, Ukrainians, Congolese, Sudanese, Ethiopians, Eritreans.
That includes helping people find a taste of home.
Okay, we know where the halal place is, and we know, where to point people if they're looking for certain foods.
Parwar and other restaurant owners can remember how difficult it was finding authentic food when they first moved to Harrisonburg.
It was hard not having those food.
It was a little bit depressing because it was like you were missing out of what you were used to.
Just ask Veronica Avila.
Being Mexican and having that background, I was like, oh, this is not Mexico.
Veronica grew up in Mexico and California. Thanks to people like her, it's now becoming less of a problem.
Over 300 variety of food options here. It's huge, humongous.
Veronica opened Tacos El Primo in 2006, serving authentic Mexican cuisine in the very first registered food truck in the Shenandoah Valley.
It kind of brings us back to our culture, to what our heritage is from families, right? And it's passed along to our kids.
For Marina Muon, cooking is also a family affair.
I always loved cooking because when I was little, Mom sells noodles in Malaysia. So that's why I love to make noodles or saute.
Marina, who hails from Malaysia, started working at Boboco, an Indonesian restaurant, in 2016 as a chef, before taking over as the owner in January, hoping to continue sharing her culture with the Harrisonburg community.
It's just learning people's culture and to understand them better. And you just realize that people it's nice to know people from everywhere.
Everyone wants food. Everyone needs a haircut. So you'll succeed in life with these, right?
Parwar says he learned to cook from his father, who moved his family from Kurdistan more than 2 decades ago, seeking a better life in the United States.
He had his own business back home as well. He had a restaurant and a hookah lounge, He had everything back home, but his stuff was to have a better future for us.
Parwar says his goal for Pasha is not only to introduce Harrisonburg to his Kurdish community, it's also to offer new Kurdish arrivals a place of refuge and familiarity.
When they walk in to see the flag right there, I'm like, oh wow, you're from Kurdistan. And then they love that. And I enjoy, I enjoy helping them out, whatever I can do to help them out.
Parwar and other restaurateurs hope their kitchens stay busy and their dining rooms stay packed, and that sharing their food can create a more inclusive and tastier community in Virginia. For VPM News Focal Point, I'm Dennis Ting.
Harrisonburg now has about 70 international restaurants, grocery stores, and food trucks, and the list keeps growing. In September, the city hosts its annual International Food Festival that attracts more than 9,000 people from across the Shenandoah Valley. VPM News Focal Point is interested in the points of view of Virginians. To hear more from your Virginia neighbors and to share your own thoughts and story ideas, find us online at vpm.org/focalpoint. Virginia's indigenous peoples have traditions associated with food that date back millennia. Before colonization, they lived off the bounty of the land, growing food based on nature's natural rhythms. European settlement disrupted those cycles, forcing Native Americans from their homelands, impacting their health, economic security, and culture. Now, a network of indigenous people across the Mid-Atlantic region are working to reconnect with the land and their ancestral foodways, and they're doing it with seeds. VPM News producer Adrienne McGibbon introduces us to Indigenous Virginians, who are the seed keepers.
It's mid-March and not quite warm enough for planting in Virginia's Blue Ridge Mountains. But for seed keeper Desiree Shelley Flores, between her 3 kids, graduate school, and her garden, there's never a free moment.
Gardening is really a year-round practice.
She started growing these tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants back in January. Desiree's a native of Baltimore, but as her family grew, they decided to move to Catawba, a town outside of Roanoke.
In 2017, my husband and I moved here. A large portion of that was to be closer to my tribal community, which is the Monacan Indian Nation, and to be within what we call Yesa, sometimes also called Tutulo-Saponi, ancestral homelands. So I wanted to be sort of in that area, be able to introduce my kids to that part of their ancestry.
Desiree's been gardening since she was a kid and even helped start an indigenous garden at the University of Maryland, where she was a student.
I think it was at that point I realized there's so much I don't know about our seeds and about our history. So after graduating, I began to get more involved with indigenous traditional lifeways and foodways.
Eventually, Desiree connected with the Alliance of Native Seed Keepers, a network of indigenous people committed to cultivating ancestral seeds. Members of the alliance plant and grow them, then share them to ensure the indigenous seeds survive. Alliance members are mainly based in the Mid-Atlantic region, but spread up into the Northeast and even into Canada.
A lot of these seeds were being housed with seed companies that not within the indigenous communities. People will still talk about Tutulo corn because that's what they've called it, is Tutulo strawberry corn. They say, well, the people who used to grow this corn are extinct, and that they're seed keeping it for them in their memory, sort of romanticizing the memory of indigenous people. And that does a lot of harm to our communities.
Victoria Ferguson, a Monacan elder, grew up on the West Virginia side of the Blue Ridge and now lives in Roanoke. She learned how to keep seeds from her mother.
Years ago, my mother started putting them in envelopes and just writing the names on the seeds, and that's why you'll see some of the envelopes here, because it's something that she used to always do.
Victoria has been keeping seeds for decades. In her collection today, she prizes her batch of Tutulo strawberry corn, which she's been growing for 6 years.
I really, really like the color of them and how they look when they're growing.
She says the seeds are so precious that she's never even tasted the corn because once eaten, the seeds are gone.
And so I save almost any seed I could possibly save at this point in time. But my father used to always say it's better to have and not need than to need and not have.
Victoria recalls walks in the woods with her father and siblings.
And as he's walking through, he would identify different plants. He would tell them the use of it. He taught them how to mark their trails so they wouldn't get lost and they can get back home.
Following generations of racism, segregation, and land loss endured by Native people, Victoria laments the loss of connection to tribal places, but she still cherishes what her parents taught her about living in harmony with nature and still keeps the traditions alive.
You know, my father made sure we built these little ridges to put our seeds in, and how he stepped off the garden, and he had this stick that he used to put a hole in the ground where the corn seeds would grow. And so just being involved with that from the time that I was 5, so I still plant my corn and beans together like I was taught from my early age.
Victoria taught her own children and now teaches students at Virginia Tech the same method she learned as a young girl. She started an Indigenous garden on campus in 2014. From one Virginia college campus to another, researchers at William & Mary are using high-tech tools to enhance ancient knowledge and build food sovereignty.
Food sovereignty is the concept that a community would be completely self-sufficient on their own, being able to grow their own food, commodities, whether that be livestock, crops, aquatic animals, being able to support their community and the growth of their community sustainably.
Troy Wipungwi is part of a group designing an AI-powered computer program for Virginia's tribes. The program connects ancient and modern agricultural knowledge to predict the best place for crops to grow, how much that location will yield, and the cost of production.
And we're going out into the communities to talk about what types of foods they're currently eating and what do they think are traditional foods and what would they like to be seen grown on tribal lands if they were to engage in a food sovereignty project, is getting a conversation going. That's incredibly important for this resurgence of Indigenous food. I see technology as an enhancement of what's happened in the past, with the ability to do real-time kind of evaluation to ensure that we can continue to move forward, either in the way that our ancestors have done it or in a way that is set for the modern age.
Just down the road from William & Mary, the focus turns from sustenance to the sacred.
Tobacco is used in our community in a way it's more ceremonial and seen more as medicinal.
Historian Chris Costello, who is Cherokee, shares his knowledge about American Indian life in the 18th century at colonial Williamsburg.
These are the tobacco seed pods. Now you can fit about 50,000 tobacco seeds within 1 teaspoon.
Chris was faced with a challenge all seed keepers deal with. In order to cultivate the seeds, you have to plant them. But there's always the risk that what you plant won't survive. He started with just 100 tobacco seeds, and his efforts to save them have been a success.
So I was able to provide tobacco to not only my own community directly, but the larger Native community in Virginia.
Chris is growing the indigenous tobacco at Colonial Williamsburg to teach visitors about its historical and cultural significance.
It's typically taboo to purchase something like that, so you'd want to grow it yourself, harvest it yourself, or be gifted it. And so it's just become a responsibility of mine to provide that to the community.
Chris sees these renewed efforts to cultivate seeds as a kind of activism.
We have had the longest interaction of colonization here in Virginia, and so those tribes here in the local area have stood the test of time and, have been here on reservations for the longest period of time as well. And so being able to provide these seeds and cultivate these seeds is that form of resistance to all the things that we've lost throughout time to colonization.
Victoria and Desiree support all efforts, both technological and natural, to reconnect communities and revive ancestral practices.
Fight like you live here. You're going to fight to protect that land, and part of that is taking care of it because you want to take care of it for the next generation, for those who come after you.
Troy Wipungwi and his team at William & Mary's Global Research Institute recently received a $600,000 grant to support their project. He hopes the research leads to large-scale food sovereignty efforts, but says that technology cannot solve ongoing tribal issues like limited funding and staffing. Desiree, Victoria, and Chris are now planting their seeds as the weather warms. Food evokes memory, family history, and tradition. Soul food is closely tied to Black cultural identity. Documentarian and activist Byron Hurt's film called Soul Food Junkies addresses the comfort and consequences of the ingredients in soul food. VPM has collaborated with Byron Hurt on some of his previous documentary work, and we welcome him to our program. Talk a little bit about what prompted you to make the documentary.
I was inspired to make the film after my father was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And that set off my journey to learn more about how food impacts people more specifically Black people and the Black community.
I want to take a quick look at a clip from Soul Food Junkies. This is when you went down south to a sporting event and experienced tailgating the soul food way. Okay, let's take a look.
I grabbed a piece of corn, hoping they'd be satisfied. But my man right here wasn't having it.
No, get your chicken. It's all good. I'm good. Get your chicken in, man. Hold up, man. Hold up. You got to have it right here. Hey, you got to have it. I'm good. Taste it. Taste it. I'm going to taste it. You got to taste it in front of us. I'm going to taste it right now. Taste it. There you go, dog. It ain't right. Tell the people it ain't right.
Yo, I cannot front. That turkey neck drenched in pork juice was delicious.
You were kind of pressured by your peers there in the group to sample some food that you don't normally eat. What does that say about the sense of belonging that comes with certain types of food and certain ways of eating?
Soul food can be, what earns you your Black card or has your Black card revoked. Because of the fact that I had changed my eating habits, over the years and no longer ate some of those traditional soul foods, that I guess are considered to be a part of our culinary tradition, it just made for a very funny, humorous moment.
A lot of what is considered soul food comes from what people had to eat because they had nothing else. What is the connection to slavery and poverty in the soul food diet?
Many of those foods helped us to survive some really difficult times during the period of enslavement when Black people were not afforded access to the top quality foods that white people had access to. But many of us hold on to some of those traditional foods, even though there's more information that we have today that suggests that eating too much of it can lead to some really serious health consequences. And so the point of the film is that we can continue to enjoy soul food if we cook it and prepare it in much healthier ways.
You can watch the full interview on our website. The Lynnhaven variety of oysters is quite famous in Virginia Beach. The oysters are also widely known nationally and overseas. Legend has it that they were among Captain John Smith's first meals when he arrived in Virginia in 1607. Now, Chris Ledford, oyster farmer and owner of Pleasure House Oysters, is harvesting the Lynnhaven delicacy and teaching about its history. Multimedia reporter Kairos Manzanares brings us the story.
Go ahead and pitch it off to the port. People come to Virginia Beach and come to Virginia for the oyster trail to experience oysters and oyster roasts, oyster festivals. They drink wine with the oysters. There's a whole relationship that oysters have with the food and wine and tourism world, and people come to Virginia for oysters. What it means to be an oyster farmer is to craft an oyster here on the Lynnhaven that meets the reputation of the river and do it in a way that's sustainable and profitable, but is good for the environment. The Lynnhaven oyster is special and unique because of the balance. It's salty, but not too salty. It's got seaweed notes. It's got a great flavor. It's not earthy or metallic like other areas. It's just a sweet, briny oyster. It's just perfect. It's a 300-year legend. Oysters are often looked at as being the seafood mascot of Virginia because it's just been here forever. It's been the food of royalty. It was the food throughout the 1700s and 1800s. It's bucket time. They ate oysters, with the first colonists to help them get through the winter, when it was very difficult. So it's been a food from day one. It also was a food, of ancient civilizations. So it's a food that's been around a long time, and it's had its ups and downs, and now, we're finding out new things about it, and we're bringing it back, and it's just an exciting food to be around. For every day that we harvest and sell the oysters, there's 3 or 4 days of work where we don't make a dime, and that is keeping the oysters from being crowded. So that's what we did today. We split the oysters in their containers, which were bags in this case. So for every bag that we cleaned and divided became 2 bags. So that's a big growth, so they need room to grow. So that's what we did today, what we call maintenance. I call it maintenance work. In the oyster industry, they call it husbandry. Some of the benefits of oyster farming are that we are letting the wild oysters come back. So we're using farmed oysters to sell and supply the needs of the consumer, but at the same time, that lets the wild oysters rebound and come back because their numbers are lower. Another benefit of oyster farming is that we filter the water. The oysters filter the water, they eat algae, bacteria, and they make it into a protein that is great to eat. A lot of people ask me, what ways can you eat an oyster? What ways can they be consumed? It's limitless. You got oyster po' boys, fried oyster chowder, oyster stew, oysters raw in the half shell, roasted oysters, oysters like they do in New Orleans where they melt butter and cheese and reduce it down, barbecue oysters, you name it.
Whether it's food harvested from Virginia's waters or pulled from Virginia's soil, what we eat tells a story about where we've been and where we're going. Check our website, vpm.org/focalpoint, for more about oyster farming, native seed keeping, food as medicine, and the complete interview with Byron Hurt. You'll also find special Focal Point coverage of Ivo Otieno's death while in police custody. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Production funding for VPM News Focal Point is provided by the estate of Mrs. Ann Lee Saunders Brown and by
Thank you for watching. Continue to follow Virginia news and stories by subscribing to our VPM YouTube channel.